Yeah, hi guys. My name's Lloyd. I'm an investment analyst at Patria Investments. So we used to be part of Aberdeen Private Equity Investments, and we got bought out of there in April last year and moved across into Patria. So Patria is an alternative investments platform. It was mostly LATAM up until last year, at which point they expanded into Europe with the acquisition of our business. So they really cover all parts of private markets. So you do a lot of direct private equity, infrastructure, real estate, a bit of private credit, a bit of public equities in LATAM. And then our business is indirect private equity. So we do investments into private equity funds by primarily European private equity management. We also have a US arm. So we're probably 75% Europe and then 25% US. And we've got three people in the Patria New York office that run out of our team.
Perfect, thank you. And in terms of like your education, why did you choose to study at Edinburgh and why econ and finance?
That's a good question. So as you can probably tell from the accent, I'm Scottish. I'm from just outside of Edinburgh. So I actually only applied for Scottish uni. So I applied for a few and then I was kind of deliberating between St Andrews and Edinburgh. And I like golf. So St Andrews had a bit of a pull, but I ended up opting for Edinburgh because I thought St Andrews was slightly too small. I obviously had lots of friends and stuff in Edinburgh already. Edinburgh had a good reputation for economics, and so that was the real kind of decision maker for ending up going to Edinburgh. And then economics with finance, it's quite difficult. I always thought, like when I was applying for university, I had virtually no idea what I wanted to do because I don't think anyone does when you're 17 coming out of school. And so I was trying to keep my options open, to be perfectly honest. So you could either go quite focused and pick a kind of specific subject that has a chartered career path, or you can go for something that gives you kind of optionality when you graduate. And I thought economics is one where you keep your options open in terms of what industry you want to go into, and it's generally a pretty employable degree. So that was kind of the logic when I left school and decided to go into econ with finance. I actually started doing kind of pure economics. And then when you started trying to pick your kind of optional subjects in first semester of first year, I realized that the stuff that I wanted to do was actually part of the business school in finance. And so I had to transition across to an economics with finance degree in order to do those.
I think we all share similar incentives when going to uni. But I know that you've like had very outstanding academic performance. So I think a question I would ask is how much weight would you give to academic like excellence over industry exposure or even like extracurricular activities like UTIC?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, a really difficult question. I think it's slightly different for everyone. I don't know if there's a kind of set rule of you should do extracurricular for X amount of time, or I think different employers look for different things. I think academic performance is obviously important, but it's definitely not the be all and end all. So I don't think that if you're an absolutely exceptional academically and you've got great qualifications, that's brilliant and it puts you in really good stead to get a great job. But actually, the way employers look at recruitment is much more rounded than that. And it's actually about kind of team fit, motivation, and actually a lot of that kind of stuff you can prove out through these extracurricular activities. It's quite hard to prove out that you're a great team player or, those kind of intangible things from qualifications. And therefore, playing in sports teams or joining clubs at university give you almost another avenue in which to prove that out. So I think there's definitely a role to play in both extracurricular stuff and academics. So there's no hard and fast rule. I think I wasn't involved in that many clubs at university. In hindsight, I probably should have tried to do more. But yeah, it's just the way it fell for me. But I think everyone does it slightly differently.
I know you were saying like you wanted to do like maybe more clubs and stuff. If you were to go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice when you were at university, what would it be?
Yeah, it's another good question. I think probably it would have been to kind of throw myself into it a bit more. I feel like for the first year or two of uni, because I didn't move out and I lived like half an hour away from uni, I treated it a bit like a job. So I would like drive to uni, do the day at uni, and then go home. And I don't know if I necessarily lived the uni lifestyle for the first couple of years because I treated it that way. So I think that's really the advice I give myself is kind of throw yourself into it a bit more. And I think if I'd done that, I probably would have got involved in more of the club stuff and the extracurricular stuff. But because I had other stuff, like I played a lot of golf and stuff when I was younger, and that was all separate to the uni, and therefore I just kind of kept it separate. So I think that's probably relatively unusual because most people will move away for uni and live in halls and then kind of naturally fall into these clubs. But yeah, definitely say if I was going back, that's probably what I would do.
Do you think if you were graduating today, you'd pick the same career path you had, or was there something else you maybe thought was an option for you?
Yeah, well, ironically, like I said, so I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was going to uni, and then when I was coming out of uni, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'd done an internship after second year in Aberdeen, actually doing kind of product strategy stuff, and through that I realised actually I really enjoyed the finance stuff. But there's so many roles within finance. It's quite hard to know, what part of that you want to go into. I mean, so I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do when I was leaving uni. I think I got lucky in that I kind of fell into a role where there was quite a lot of variety. I worked across different teams in different parts of the business, and therefore it gave me quite a good idea of what parts I liked and what parts I didn't. So I think because the other thing is, so that second year internship that I did, the idea was I was going to go back for another internship with Aberdeen and do an investment team role after third year. But because COVID had started in the March of 2020, that got postponed until after uni. So I actually graduated and then did a second internship post uni before starting on a graduate program. So actually, when I finished uni, I didn't really know that an investment team was what I wanted to do because I'd never worked in an investment team before. So yeah, it just happened that way, such that I ended up going into investment team in the kind of July after graduating from my internship, and then really enjoyed it. So I had a rough idea that's what I wanted to do, and then went on to a graduate program that was rotational and therefore gave me quite a lot of scope to learn about different roles and different parts of the business and how the analysis differs in different asset classes. I think that's really valuable. I think in terms of advice for people leaving uni now, I think those graduate programs that give you the opportunity to move around are super important because, I mean, I met people in uni through UTIC and the like where, I mean, these people seem to have all figured out, right? They're 18, 19 and they like, I want to work in investment banking. That's all I live for. But realistically, no one really knows they love a job and no one knows what that job involves until they've done it. I used to sit in some of these like club meetings and think, how do these people know? Like, everyone seems to know exactly what they want to do, and I'm still got no idea. And I think looking back, I'm quite glad it was like that because it kept my options open, right? You don't want to leave uni and go into something straight away and be like, right, this is me for the rest of my life. You want to try and get a sense of what you enjoy. And those graduate programs that give you the opportunity to do a few things are quite a good way of doing that.
I think that's very good advice. And so you mentioned that being able to expose to all these different roles helped you a lot. But did you meet anybody at Aberdeen or even in previous roles that assisted you to get to where you are now?
Yeah, loads, loads. I think the people are arguably the most important thing at the kind of outset of your career, because the people you meet inform the way in which you work and the way you think about work, and the culture of the place you work is super important. I was really lucky with Aberdeen. I mean, I couldn't say a bad thing about anyone I met in Aberdeen. They were all very supportive. I think when you start out, you really need people to not handhold, but give you a lot of support in answering your questions. Because inevitably, when you start, I mean, I had so many. I know people say there are no stupid questions, but I had so many stupid questions but there's no way to learn unless you ask them, and therefore you need people around you that are willing to sit down and take half an hour to talk you through things that actually they do with their eyes shut, but you've got no idea where to even start. And across Aberdeen, so in all those teams that I worked in, everyone was like that. So I still keep in touch with a lot of my teams. I worked in real estate for a rotation. I still catch up with that team. First team I joined was a real estate debt team in private credit at Aberdeen. And the head of that team, the whole team were in London and I was in Edinburgh. So I worked virtually for 6 months with them and went down for a couple of weeks kind of individually to meet the team. I still keep in touch with the head of that team. So we catch up quarterly. I had a call with him on Friday last week. And because those relationships you build up, they're almost like kind of mentoring, but informal mentoring, where you can kind of bounce ideas off them and they're kind of willing to help, even though you're not in their team or even in their business anymore. So yeah, the people are super important. And I'd urge anyone that was going to work now to really keep those relationships going over time because it's hugely valuable.
And I guess one more question I have for you. For maybe aspiring students that like are about to graduate or even looking for internships right now that don't really have an idea of what they want to do and maybe aren't successful in getting an internship? How do you suggest that they kind of narrow down their like chosen career path, I guess you could say?
Yeah, I think it's really tough, right? And make no mistake, if you don't get the chance to try something, it's really difficult to know if you like it. I think the risk is that when you're at uni and you don't get an internship, you think, oh, well, that's it. Like everyone else is so much more employable than I am. I'm never going to get into a decent role. It's just not true. I mean, like I was saying there, like when I was part of UTIC, you'd go to these meetings. Everyone in second year was applying for investment banking Spring Insight weeks. So obviously the kind of precursor to the internship. And I applied for them all as well because I thought, well, all these people know what they want to do. They all want to do banking, so I should want to do banking as well. To be honest, one, I didn't really know what banking was, and two, I'm not sure I would have enjoyed it that much. Um, so I applied for it all, didn't get any of them. So got like I think I heard back from one which rejected me, and the rest didn't hear back from at all, which was a bit soul destroying. And then happened upon this Aberdeen internship on LinkedIn. It was late in the cycle, right? Like everyone else had Spring Insight Weeks and stuff organised already. This was a kind of summer internship that was at the latter stage of the recruitment. And I thought, it said penultimate year, so I was like a year early, and I thought, well, what's the harm in throwing your hat in the ring and see what happens? So put in an application, got through to the interview, and actually got it. So I think the moral of that story is keep trying. Like even if you've not got an internship or anything yet, keep applying. Even if you hear nothing back, you can get quite bogged down by it, but keep trying. Another thing is, even if you don't get an internship, spend your summer, I don't know, working part time somewhere locally near your house, or go away traveling, because all that's valuable experience, right? You don't have to spend your summer working in the job that you're going to end up doing as a career to get good experience. You get good experience in lots of different things, and therefore, yeah, it's difficult to say what the right thing to do is, but yeah, try and use that time off in the summer to either get some experience in something, but or ultimately do something you enjoy. Like if you absolutely love, I don't know, playing golf, go and try and get involved at your local golf club, or volunteer at your local school helping out with PE or something like that, because actually it's all teaching you different skills. You don't appreciate it at the time, but eventually, even if it's just building your confidence in kind of, I don't know, coaching or something, that feeds into your skill set once you start out in any career.
What typically day to day do you do in your role? Like what sort of things does it entail?
It's a good question. And to be honest, on my graduate program, I didn't work in private equity at all. So I did a bit of time in private credit, a bit of time in public equities, some real estate, and then some infrastructure. So I'd never worked in PE before. I didn't really know what the structure of the industry or anything was. So it was kind of new to me when I started, and I started about 2 years ago now in the team. So we're, like I say, so Patria is a kind of alternatives manager that's got a lot of direct private equity, so buying businesses. But the European business that they bought out of Aberdeen is an indirect private equity business. And what that means is we invest with kind of direct private equity managers. So they're called it's called GPs, so general partners. And we invest into their funds as limited partners. So that's what's called a primary. So they're raising a new fund to buy businesses with. We invest in that fund as a limited partner. That's a primary investment. We also do secondaries, which is where there'll be an existing limited partner in that fund, right? So say the fund has a life of 10 years and the fund is 5 years into its life, but actually one of the LPs wants to get some of their cash back. So they want to sell that position in that private equity fund. So that's what's called a secondary. So we would be, lots of big secondary players, and they buy positions from existing LPs in the funds. And then you take on that LP position in the fund. So that's what a secondary investment is. And we also do co-investment, which is where these private equity managers will buy businesses and they'll offer co-investment to their limited partners. So the limited partners will invest directly in the company alongside them, usually on a kind of fee-free basis. So those are the kind of three types of investment we do. My role as an investment analyst is really to look at those opportunities. So most of my time is spent analysing different opportunities. And that's the variation across those different types is really what I like about it. You see a huge variety in the types of analysis you do across those three types of deal. And also lots of businesses, because we can be looking at, a fund of 10 businesses to buy a secondary in, or we could be looking at a co-investment in a particular business. And so you see a lot of different businesses, you do a lot of different analysis, and the cadence of deal flow we've got is really high because we've got a really large portfolio of lots of different managers that provide co-investment flow. We've got a kind of secondaries fund range, and lots of separately managed accounts that do all three. So yeah, that's really what my day-to-day looks like. It's mostly analysis and the opportunities, but it's also helping out on kind of client reporting and client requests. We've got a listed private equity trust called Patria Private Equity Trust. I work quite closely on that, which is obviously, it's got quite a high degree of reporting required. We've got a board that we report to, and therefore there's a lot of engagement with them over time. So yeah, I think that's broadly what my day-to-day looks like.
That's tough work by the sounds of it. Um, so obviously there's lots of variety and analysis in what you do, and you mentioned that you do lots of reporting. What's some underappreciated or key skills that someone in your position would have to succeed?
Yeah, I think there are probably lots of different skills so I think everyone's slightly different and everyone's a different set of skills which they can bring to this kind of role. I think the kind of overarching ones that are important for a kind of analyst role, and anyone in an investment team, to be honest, is a kind of natural curiosity and an interest in businesses, right? That's the key thing, because you spend a lot of your time looking at businesses and trying to understand how businesses work, analysing the financials, getting a sense of what the outlook might be and what the private equity manager's plan for taking that business forward is. So I think it's quite analytical, and you've got to be that kind of way of thinking, and also be interested in actually digging deeper and properly understanding them, because it's a lot of work if you're not actually interested in it. So to have a kind of career in this, you've got to have a genuine interest in it. I think that's probably the most important thing.
So it seems like you enjoy lots of analysis. But on the other hand, what's some of the main challenges that you may face?
As an investment analyst, or
Yeah,
yeah,
or even in the in your industry.
yeah. Well, so I think, so taking those separately, I think as an analyst, I guess it's hard to see the future, right? That's the difficult thing. You've got to try and preempt things that may or may not happen. So the analysis itself is inherently difficult because the future is unpredictable, as has been proven out in the last year or so with all these Trump tariffs, right? That was quite hard to foresee, and therefore, if you were analysing the business and kind of business plan for the next 5 years, whilst you might have a decent idea of what the world's going to look like for the next year, 18 months, beyond that, it's quite unpredictable. So that's the challenge. I guess what we would focus on is investing in businesses that we think will be resilient regardless of what happens, or businesses you've got really strong conviction in, that even if something goes wrong, actually they'll still do well, and you can see a decent return out of that investment. So the challenge is really knowing what will happen and trying to preempt those things that are inherently unknowable. I think in terms of the industry, the real challenge in the last year or two, potentially more actually, is the kind of lack of exits and distributions coming out of private equity. So it's been really difficult to sell businesses in the last few years because of geopolitical uncertainty, conflict, and then tariffs. That actually it's not a great time to be looking to sell your businesses. And the resulting impact on us is, if private equity managers aren't selling their businesses, we're not getting distributions back for our investors. So that's been the inherent challenge. It seems like that's improving slightly this year. Again, it's hard to tell, but that's kind of been the real challenge of the last while for private equity.
Obviously, like it's different for every industry, but in terms of like using AI in the workplace, does that really fit into your role at all? Or like, do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. It's the question everyone's asking at the minute. So I think, yeah, there are two ways to think of it. So I think AI for our investments is important because AI creates, one, a huge amount of opportunity for new businesses coming through that can disrupt existing industries, and also to some extent a threat for some businesses, right? If they fall behind in the curve on AI, they can become stranded or lag behind peers. So that's what we've got to think about from an investment perspective. I think from our business, in terms of, investment manager using AI, it can be used for a lot. I think it will be a huge help to us in the coming years. I think there's still a bit of refinement to go, but we speak about it quite a lot internally in terms of how we can use it to improve our processes, be more efficient. But I think it's just going to take a bit of time to get that implemented and see how it plays out. I think I'm probably inherently cautious on using it because if you've not seen the source, I'm always a bit apprehensive about taking it at face value without knowing its accuracy. Over time, that will improve. And also, we just need to, try to integrate it and see, and effectively test it and see how it works and see how accurate it is before we can roll it out more generally. But it's definitely something we're thinking about. And it's something that everyone is thinking about and trying to integrate because it's a huge opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we'll finish up with one more question and then we'll let you
Go.
understand you're very busy. So given that AI is changing the workspace, in 5 to 10 years, I know it's a bit of a basic question, but what are your predictions on where you see your industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that's the big question. It's a difficult one to answer. One thing that's definitely playing out now is the traditional private equity. I think when people think about private equity deal, they think about private equity managers taking on lots of debt and buying businesses. But that doesn't really work in an environment where interest rates are higher, and therefore the focus now for private equity managers really isn't about taking on lots of debt. It goes back to more fundamental. How do you drive value in a business? And the way in which you do that is really hands-on improvements in the business, whether that be professionalization, internationalization, kind of centralization of functions to reduce cost. It's kind of more tangible value creation rather than just taking on debt and driving returns that way. So that's what we're seeing at the minute, and that's much more of a focus for these private equity managers going forward. I think what the industry will look like in 5 to 10 years is hard to say. I think there's also, from our perspective, different parts of our industry. So the kind of secondary stuff I was talking about, that part of the market has grown hugely in the last 5 years. And I think it will continue to grow because it offers effectively liquidity to limited partners in private equity vehicles. So it's a really useful mechanism for if you're investing in a long-term investment vehicle like a private equity fund to manage to get out of that and get some liquidity. And it also offers an opportunity for buyers into these funds to acquire the interest at a discount to what their current value is and generate decent returns over the kind of latter part of a fund's life. Yeah, that's probably not a great answer, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out over the next 5 to 10 years. I think things will inevitably change, but it's hard to foresee.
Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's all the questions we've got just now. So
Thank you for that.